This message is going to consist of 4 principles and a warning. The 4 principles are the principle of personal holiness, that has to do with relationships specifically, of future planning, of purity, of purpose. This is my love-hate relationship with alliteration. And then there's a warning. Why guys are jerks and girls are stupid. It's not a comprehensive list about reasons why guys are jerks. And it's not an exhaustive list about why girls are stupid. It's very specific to this one area. And that's what our message will be about today.
Now that you have our attention.
That's right. That's right. So this is where we're going to start in 1 Thessalonians 4, reading about personal holiness, starting in verse 3. Sometimes people might ask you, what's the will of God for your life? Well, turn to this verse, and you can see it spelled out for you. What's the will of God for my life? Well, this is the will of God for you, your sanctification. That's part of God's will for you. Now, there's other verses in the Scripture that have that exact same start. Like, this is God's will for you. So if you're curious to know, like, what's God's will for me, you can find it in God's Word. He'll tell you, like, this is God's will. And you'll discover in that study that it's more about the person that you are than it is about the things, the decisions that you need to make. So keep that in mind. This is God's will. This is the will of God, your sanctification. What does that mean? Well, specifically that you should abstain from sexual immorality. That each of you should know how to possess his own vessel in sanctification and honor. Not in passion of lust like the Gentiles who do not know God. That no one should take advantage of and defraud his brother in this matter. For the Lord is the avenger of all such. As we also forewarned you and testified. For God did not call us to uncleanness, but in holiness. When it uses the phrase, possess his own vessel. What are we talking about? What's it referring to there? Possess his own vessel. What vessel is it describing here? Obviously not a boat. So what's the vessel? Go ahead, Tim.
Is it talking about your body?
Specifically, yeah. That you should possess your body in this way, sanctification and honor. Sanctification just means that it's set apart for a special use. All right, it's set apart for a special use. In contrast, the Gentiles don't do this. And the reason they don't do this is because they don't know God. But you know God. So you possess your body in sanctification and honor. And then it says that no one should take advantage of and defraud his brother in this matter. The word defraud there means that you're raising feelings and expectations that you cannot righteously fulfill. In other words, it's teaching that you're using your body in a way to raise expectations and feelings that you cannot righteously fulfill. It's defrauding in that matter. And the warning is, the Lord is the avenger of all such. So you're in danger of the Lord's avenging. So the bottom line is this. When it comes to sexual immorality, Paul writes to Timothy, he's like, flee from it. Like, it's not a fight you're going to win. Just run. Like, keep yourself pure in that way. Don't fall into that trap. So, show some good sense. You know, like, Craig was talking about bright line decisions. Like, show some good sense. Like, maybe your bright line is we're just not going to spend time alone. Because that really helps to avoid the situation. You know, to keep it from coming up. As you're considering that bright line in your relationship, let me ask you some questions to help clarify where that bright line might lie for you. One question might be, is it wrong to kill someone for no reason? Just nod your head. Is it wrong to kill someone for no reason? What if I don't really kill them? What if I just bruise them a little? Is that okay? So you're shaking your head no. If the bruising that would lead to killing is wrong, we know that sex outside of marriage is wrong. The Bible's very clear about that. Are the feelings of arousal that lead to sex also? So something to think about. If the bruising that leads to murder would be wrong, are the feelings of arousal that lead to sex before marriage, would that also be wrong? That's what I think this verse is referring to. Are you doing things that are leading to feelings and expectations that you cannot righteously fulfill? I mean, it's something to consider. Now, this principle has to do with personal holiness. That's the holiness side of it. What's the personal side of it? Well, you have to go to chapter 5 to see what exactly is a person. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 does describe to us what a person is. Look at chapter 5, verse 23. Can I get a young man to read that for me?
The very God of peace sanctifies you wholly. And I pray, God, your whole spirit and soul and body be preserved blameless unto the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Excellent. So you see how that person is described as spirit, soul, and body, and that all of these remain sanctified till the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. Do you see that? All three of these parts are important. All three of these parts are connected. All three of these parts influence each other. In other words, things that happen in your body affect your soul and spirit. Things that happen in your soul affect your body and spirit. Josh is like, what? Let me give you an example. There's this article from USA Today, and it says this: a spiritually minded student is a happier student. That is, grounding spiritually impacts your attitude. Laughter is the best medicine, because Proverbs teaches that it's health to the bones. Right? In other words, your emotions have a big impact on your body. David is like, when he was repenting, he's like, about Bathsheba, he's like, my soul is like all in anguish, and it's rotting my bones out. It's affecting me physically. The way we treat our body impacts our spirit, our sanctification in our body. The decisions we're making about what we do with our body as a temple of the Lord impacts our spirit. And our spiritual decisions and our maturity is impacting our body. All three are important. All three make a person. And the passage is telling us to possess that vessel in honor, that the Lord wants us to be holy in these areas, and specifically in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 is talking about your body. Could someone read 1 Corinthians 6:10? It also talks about our body and our spirit. Go ahead, Nick.
For ye are bought with a price,
Yes.
therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's.
Yes. So it's saying glorify God in your body. But why? Who's it belong to? God. You probably, if you're like me, you like books. I like books. If someone let you borrow a book, are you going to treat it differently than a book that you own? Nod your head yes, or no one's ever going to let you borrow their books. Yeah. If you are bought with a price, if your body is God's, and I'm borrowing it, that's going to impact how I treat it, right? Because it's not really mine. It belongs to Him. Right? Let me illustrate it a little bit differently, or like in another sort of way. Food is no big deal. Food is all about feeling good. Doesn't matter what food you eat as long as it tastes good. Food is strictly a private matter. No one can judge whether any food is good or bad for you. If you don't like healthy food, that's okay, because what might be good for you is not good for me. Food is simply about personal preference. So, eat all the cookies and pizza you want. Just be careful that you don't choke. Okay, so you laugh a little bit about like my facetious example. Why? Why do you find it amusing? Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
Because personal opinion has to be tested, and the natural consequences of making decisions can't be escaped.
That's right. So we've learned things about nutrition and how it affects our biology, our physical health, right? We understand that. And a person who rejects this kind of advice and eats healthy Do we esteem them high or do we esteem them low? How do we think about that person? A person who's constantly eating well, how do you esteem them? Yeah, me too, high, because I'm like, I admire you. You walk past those donuts. It's amazing. We recognize that attitude is poor for food because it leads to a lack of quality of life now, but it also leads to a lack of quality of life in your future. Now, you notice I have the word food in red. Substitute the word food for a different word. The word sex. But this is exactly like from the world's point of view, they'll esteem someone who thinks about sex in this way highly, someone who is thinking about purity low, right? But there's a similar kind of consequence. If we live our life like that, with that kind of attitude toward sex, then it's going to affect us with a low quality of life now and in our future. So that brings me to the second principle, the principle of proper planning. I got this picture from I think it was from a magazine back when I was, I don't know, in my late teens probably. Cut the picture out. That's why it has this crease right here. Taped it right above my desk in my dorm room. You know why I did that? Goals. That's why. Goals. I wanted to be like this old man and this old woman, like walking, together. I wanted to have that kind of relationship when I reached that age. But how do you get a relationship like that? Well, it can't start when I'm 62. All right, just like healthy eating, like the earlier you start, the better. Making good choices about your relationships, the earlier, the better. Often we hear things about like abstinence, and we think of abstinence as like, okay, I'm just going to abstain from sexual immorality. But don't confuse that. Like, abstinence is not, abstaining from sexual immorality is not just eliminating something. Or it's not just depriving yourself of something. What it is enabling you to pursue something else, something better. And that is a relationship with the Lord where you can learn to trust Him with relationships. All right, so don't think of like my abstinence is just I'm avoiding something. Think of it as I'm pursuing something. I want to have a relationship with the Lord that is sanctified and that's holy, and that it can draw us together as I trust Him with my future and my relationships and my choices. Very similarly, is eating healthy all about just avoiding junk food? No, it's not about just avoiding junk food. It's about learning how to eat better foods. Like managing your calories to eat better foods, make better nutritional choices. In a similar way, abstinence isn't just avoiding the junk food. It's learning how to pursue other things, like a close walk and relationship with the Lord. But to have a relationship like this, when does it start? It starts before this. Right? And that's the idea, that kind of planning has to start now, making those decisions to pursue the Lord with our whole heart, learning to trust Him to guide us to relationships. And maybe even recognizing that it's not so much about looking for the right person as it might be about being the right person. Like the kind of person that someone would want to marry and to love and to raise children with. Now, this I know is not the message that we get. How many of you go to public school? Yeah, fine. I teach in public school. I know that this is not typically the message you currently hear in the world. This is typically the message that you currently hear in the world. They're going to say something like, all right, big assembly today, it's sex ed time. And it goes something like this. We're going to scare you with statistics. like over 100% of teens are now pregnant. Then we're going to scare you with some picture of a gross STD, and we're going to say teens are bursting at the seams with STDs. And then we're going to offer our solution: get your free birth control at the office. There are a multitude of reasons why this kind of thing doesn't work. One of the reasons is that teens have this problem. The problem they have is they think it won't happen to me. You're like, that's not true. All right, fine. Despite all of the data about texting and driving, you still do it? Don't nod. Blink twice. Yeah, and that's the problem. We keep thinking in our head, those statistics are for everybody else, but it's not going to bother. It won't happen to me. I can text all I want, very safely, by the way. And we think it won't happen to me. That's the problem. That's one of the problems. The other problem is emphasizing birth control hasn't helped. There's more STDs, like different types of STDs now than there ever have been. And there's more teen pregnancy now than there ever has been. So it's obviously not a solution that's working. But worse, this doesn't address part of the real problem. And part of the real problem is that any message about sexual purity or making good choices just gets drowned out by the message of the media. I want you to do a thought experiment. All right, thought experiment. Think about all of the social media out there in the world, or any media, actually. Magazine articles, like just standing in the grocery store line is enough. Books or novels that you've either heard of or read. Radio talk shows, podcasts, YouTube videos, TikTok, movies that you've watched. Think of it all. Music that you've listened to, songs that you've heard. All right? In this list, how many of them talk about sex before marriage in some kind of positive light? All right, and then how many have you seen that have talked about sex after marriage in some kind of positive light? All right, so this is going to be list number 1. This is list number 2. All right, just by show of your hands, like 1, means 1, this means 2. Which list is longer? Yeah, right? It's everywhere. We're inundated with it. Like it's everywhere you turn. That's the message of the media. Now, here's what I find interesting. I'll use an action movie as an example. I had to learn this lesson kind of the hard way, but it was definitely early in life. I watched this action movie, and you've got the hero, and he's trying to he's just trying to mind his own business, but the neighborhood bad guy, finally does something to get his ire up. Now, it just so happens he's like an ex-Navy SEAL, Marine, assassin, but they didn't know that. So now, his ire is up, right? He's going to wreak vengeance on the whole, organization of crime that has, taken the love of his life hostage, right? Does this ring any bells? Okay. So over the course of this, path of vengeance that he's wreaking, you've got the bad guys are armed with 50 caliber machine guns, and they're and you're bullets are, windows are shattering, and things are blowing up, and the person is running, and they can't seem to hit him. Bullets are ting 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 ting, they're knee deep in bullet casings, and the guy is all right. I watched a few of those movies growing up. So the first time I ever played paintball, I was like, this will be easy. A lot of bruises later. Anyway, I look like a paint can. I'm like, ow, and no. That is not for real. Anyway, usually we watch scenes like that. The guy jumps off of the building just as the helicopter comes up, and he's grabs onto the helicopter. You're like, oh yeah, never would happen. And we think that this would never be for real, never for real. Now he finally rescues the girl, right? And he's like, I've come to rescue you. And she's like, I'm so glad. Let's smooch. I can't wait. And you're like, oh, that's how kissing works. I just go up to a girl and say, I'm here to rescue you. And she says, somehow we don't make the connection, but both things are fake. All right, just so you know, don't learn that lesson the hard way. All right? Both things are fake. All right, it's not for real. Just saying, the media's portrayal of these things are not real. But any sitcom that you've watched or thing like that you've seen, it tries to show or send this basic message that you can have sex without commitment and you can have sex without consequence. It doesn't matter. It's a lie. And the reason it's a lie isn't necessarily because they caught an STD. And it's not because they might have gotten pregnant and they weren't planning on that. It's because it leaves a hole in your heart. The things that happen to you physically impact your soul and spirit. And it leaves you crushed and broken and jaded, and it scars. And that is a message that I think we all can relate to because we've all experienced hurt in relationships. And it would be a way more effective approach when it comes to the idea of save yourself that grief. Wait till after marriage. Let me just put some of this into perspective because sometimes our problem is we get these messages from the media. It's hard to sort them out. But let me just, again, push it to an extreme so we can see the contrast. If a mob kills somebody, is that murder? Just nod your head. Yeah, I agree. But understand what you're agreeing to. Right? Because morality is not determined by a majority. If a mob is going after someone, that doesn't make it right. It's not determined by the majority. So even if the media keeps saying, or pop culture keeps saying, this is normal, this is okay, it doesn't make it okay. In fact, these things obscure a search for the truth. Which raises this question: is there a way to objectively determine things like right and wrong? Think about that for a second. Definitely, the God's Word gives us that direction. I agree. But here's another way to kind of think of it. What makes a curse word bad? You ever think about this? I teach public high school, and they're always saying words that they shouldn't say. And so I'll say to them, why do you say that? And they're like, oh, everybody says it. Like, yeah, fine, all right, but apart from that, you ever wonder why that word? No, it's just words. It's just words. I'm like, yes, that's true. But why are some words curse words, some words are not? Like, why is that? They're like, I don't know. So I show them this. Words create a picture in our mind. If I say the word car, there is an image that forms in your mind. That's just how we're wired, all right? Words create a picture in our mind. Curse words then create a picture that is somehow dirty or derogatory. So we use these words when we're going to foul something good or foul something sacred. That's why we say this to somebody. We say their name and then they would use these curse words. Why? Because we're trying to foul something made in the image of God, something good or sacred. Because we're trying to take this good thing and foul it with the picture in our mind that's created by that curse word. All right? Which raises this question. When I say worst, I just mean, how do you get from a PG-13 rating to an R rating? Well, this is how. But what makes the worst curse word the worst curse word? It's simply this, that it fouls something sacred. Which then implies that sex is something sacred. It's something special. It's interesting to think about. The third principle is the principle of purpose, which raises this question. If you're going to argue that sex has a purpose, what is it? So I'm kicking that question to you. Sex has a purpose. What's the purpose of sex?
To reproduce?
Certainly. I'm going to use the word procreate. So procreation is clearly a purpose of sex. Any others?
Emotional bonding.
Definitely. I'm going to use the word intimacy. Any others?
The Bible says that like when a man and a woman come together, they become one flesh.
Yes, that's going to be an intimacy category. Excellent. Any other? I can tell this is a Christian conference. The only answer I ever get, there's only one answer that I ever get. What's the one answer I always get?
Pleasure.
Pleasure. That's the answer I always get. Yeah, what's the purpose of sex? The answer that I always get is pleasure. But if I were to say to you, well, actually, let's use our heads a little bit. To use our heads a little bit, let's start with the reproductive system. So you got to go back to biology a little bit. You have 11 body systems, 11 human body systems. But how is the reproductive system different than all other body systems? Yes. Yeah. If you are going to digest that donut, how many people does it take? Just you. Take a deep breath. Did you need any help to do that? Thankfully, no. Right? But if you want to procreate, if you want to bring a child into the world, can you do it by yourself? So you only have half of a reproductive system. You have one half of a system. All of the body systems, you have the whole thing. But the reproductive system, you only have half of it. Half of it. Now, to bring a child into the world, what do you need then?
Two halves.
Not now you're getting warmer, right? It's not just that I need any other half. What I really need is what kind of half?
Opposite gender.
Yes, I need the complementary half, right? It's not just any half that'll do. I need the complementary half that'll do. And it's only when those two halves are together that you have a whole reproductive system. And that speaks to us of this idea of intimacy. Like, in order for procreation to happen, you have to have the two complementary halves. But those two halves become one whole. And that's where we get the idea of intimacy. The two individuals becoming one flesh, one whole. And we'll look at a little bit more at that. But before we do, what's the purpose of a flashlight? Yeah, shine light. So it kind of but not this flashlight. This flashlight is not for shining light. This is my new pencil case. Now, will it work as a pencil case? Sure. But if I use it as a pencil case, will it work as a flashlight? No. That's the problem with saying one of the purposes for sex is pleasure. Breathing through your nose gives us pleasure. But that's not the purpose of your nose. Otherwise, I might spend the rest of the afternoon sniffing glue. Because sniffing glue is pleasurable, but it's not the purpose of my nose. The purpose of my nose is to discern good smells from bad smells. Avoid the bad smells, which some of you guys are like, get me out of this room here. Because it's starting to stink. And some of the good smells, like all this great cooking we've experienced, right? It's lunchtime. We need to head over to the dining room. Right? If I use my nose for pleasure and just sniff glue, I might actually ruin its ability to discern smells. If I use my flashlight as a pencil case, I lose the ability, the capacity for it to be a source of light. So let's look at some of these purposes. We can infer then that it has a purpose. Now the Bible puts it this way. So then they are no longer two, but what?
One flesh.
One flesh. So these two complementary halves coming together to become one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no man separate. The idea here is intimacy. And it's got to be complementary. That's how you get to intimacy. It's myself for another, a different person. Fill in the blank. Opposites. Hey, bright bulbs out there. Tougher one. Opposites attract. Sames. Same thing with gender, right? Well, the problem with homosexuality is this. There's no complementary nature to it. It's a self-love. It's a you are just like me and I really just love me. There's not a giving of self for another. Learning about a complement, it's an infatuation with self. And selves repel. It's self-destructive. That's part of the problem. This graphic is showing, now this was done in like 2008, but it was done by the CDC. And what it's showing is women who have had more non-marital sexual partners are less likely to have stable marriages. 0 sex before marriage, 80% chance that your marriage is going to be successful. You're going to continue on. Craig was talking about how 40% of marriages end in divorce. That means 60% end in death. Right? Because these marriages have all ended in death to death do us part. Right? That's how that marriage ended. Our one partner died. Okay.
Can't you put it in any better language?
No, because. But why is that? Like, why is that? Oh, this is a great example right here. I'm using some duct tape as an example. I have this piece of duct tape, and if I take this piece of duct tape and I stick it onto this chair, right there, voila, stuck to the chair. All right. Now I pull the duct tape off, and I go to stick it back on. What's happened to my duct tape? No, if I keep trying to stick it and I keep peeling it off, what's going to continue to happen? Yeah, to the point now where it's barely hanging on at all. New piece of duct tape. Actually, 2 pieces. Let's say I take both pieces and I stick them like this. Anyone want to volunteer to try and pull those apart? You'll spend the rest of the time working on it. Good luck. Yeah. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that one of the purposes of sex is intimacy. And it creates a stickiness in a relationship. That stickiness is evidenced here, much like in duct tape. If you get 2 individuals who have said, we've had no sex before marriage, and you stick them together, what God has joined together, it's pretty stuck. If you have individuals who are more promiscuous, you'll notice how steeply the curve drops. Like it's harder to remain faithful the more promiscuity you've experienced. Procreation and intimacy. Malachi says this, but did he not make them one, having a remnant of the Spirit? Why does he want them to be one? Why does he want them to have that intimacy? Here's the answer. What's the answer? He seeks godly offspring. Children need to see both. They need to see themselves and they need to see the other, represented in their parents. Why? Because they're imaging God. He seeks godly offspring. Way back in Genesis, God created man in his own image. He made them male and female. Males image God, females image God. Together they image God. Children need to see that. When they see that clearer image of God, they're more likely to be godly offspring. That's why. Why did he make them 2? Giving them a remnant of the Spirit. Why? Or 1. Why did he make them 1? Why? Because he wants godly offspring. A married couple is going to show that child what God is like. That's what was his design for the family to begin with. So to kind of summarize, here's this whole truth. That yes, no one's going to deny that you are in fact a sexual being. But the other half of that truth is that sex is meant for marriage. So in Genesis 1, God created man in his own image. The image of God, he created them male and female. So we've got these 2 different sexes. You're male or female. He created them. In Genesis 2, when God introduces Eve to Adam, he says, Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife, the two become one flesh. Sex is meant for marriage. The two become one flesh. So God is giving us this gift of sexuality, that you are either male or female. So be the man God is calling you to be. Be the woman that God is calling you to be. If you're called to be married, then be the couple that God is calling you to be. And if you are called to live a life of singleness, then do those things that only single people can do, because it's much more difficult for married couples. And if you are married, then welcome single people as part of your family. Like, make them feel included and appreciated and loved. That's the principle of purpose. This fourth principle is the principle of purity. You will never get out from underneath the umbrella of sexual purity. If you're single, you demonstrate that by self-control. If you're married, you show that by faithfulness. But there's no escape. The battle never ends. You're never like, oh, I'll never be tempted by sexual impurity again. Yes. You'll never get out from underneath that umbrella. If you're called to singleness, you show that by a life of self-control. If you're called to marriage, you show that by a life of faithfulness. Either way, it's a practice of self-discipline. Back when I was a kid, there was this funny phrase I didn't understand. And I didn't understand it until I was much too old. The phrase went something like this: marriage is a remedy for lust. I had no idea what that meant. I mean, I thought I knew what that meant. It was not what I thought. Marriage is a remedy for lust. What I didn't realize what that meant is this: that when you're married and you are exercising this discipline of faithfulness, what it does is it causes you to reorder your emotions and to reprioritize your desires so that you are interested in the well-being of someone else rather than fulfilling your own lusts or desires. It becomes a contest to please the other and do things that they appreciate rather than just doing whatever I want to do. Marriage is a remedy for lust in that it causes you to start reordering your priorities and desires because you want. Paul writes it this way: he wants to please his wife. That's why it's hard for married couples to sometimes do ministry things, because there's a priority of trying to please your husband or your wife. So you are a sexual being and sex is meant for marriage. Now, there's all kinds of lies associated with this. One lie is something like this: you're a sexual being, but you can't wait anymore. The truth is that you can wait. Plenty of people have. You're going to be okay, right? You're a sexual being, but everybody's doing it. Again, it's a lie. Not everybody's doing it. You're a sexual being, but you're only, like, everything about you is just sexualized. Like, there's no other part of you. That's also a lie. Sex doesn't mean anything even in marriage. It's a lie because it really does have purposes. Purposes for procreation and intimacy. Sex will make my relationships better, so I'll somehow pretend that I'm married. But again, like, there's plenty of people that have lived their whole life. I often use an example of Mother Teresa, right? She lived a fulfilled life that had a major impact on the world. I would say yes. But sex wasn't a part of it. In other words, you can live a fulfilling, rich life and be single and chaste, and it's okay. If you fall for any one of those lies or other lies that we've looked at along the way, that's how guys become jerks and girls become stupid. I like to summarize it this way. Guys are playing a game. The game they're playing is simply this. Guys play at romance because what they really want is sex. But don't think you're off the hook, ladies. Girls are playing a game. The game goes like this. Girls are playing at sex because what they really want is romance. That's falling for the lie to turn this into a game that you're playing. So let me give you some examples about what makes guys jerks. Here's one. If a guy is in a locker room on a Friday night bragging about his exploits, how do the other guys in the locker room esteem him? High or low? Yeah, that's right? Look at you. Notch on the belt, feather in the cap, stars on the collar. You're the man. Now, if a girl were to bust into the locker room and start bragging about her sexual exploits, how would she be perceived? Would she be, wow, you're amazing? Or would she be like, ew? You tell me. That's right. Yeah. But guys sometimes, this is what makes them jerks. They think somehow it's their sexual exploits that gives them value. I love this quote. A great lover is someone who can love and be loved by one woman all of his life. Not someone who goes from woman to woman. Any dog can do that. Craig was talking about like education. What makes you more like an animal? Right? To love and be loved by one woman all your life? To go from woman to woman. Any dog does that. There's nothing special about that. There's nothing great about that. So finally you meet this guy, you think, oh, he's amazing. You go out to eat and you sit down to order and he's looking at his menu and this other girl walks in and he's looking at his menu and he goes like this. And you're like, right here? Right here. I'm right here. He says, okay, it's okay, baby. It's okay, baby. I can look but not touch. No worries for you. I can look but not touch. What makes that a lie is because guys and girls are wired differently. I want to illustrate this for you. When a guy looks at this picture, this is the first thing that goes through his mind. She is thinking about me like I am thinking about her. In other words, in his mind, he is starting this fantasy. And in this fantasy, he walks on to the photo shoot, and he's like, hey, baby. And she's like, oh, this is so amazing. And he's like, it's time to smooch. And she's like, that's what's going on in his mind. All right? That's how, when guys see a picture like this, that's what they think about. Girls don't do that. All right? Girls think differently. If a girl looks at this picture, they see something like this. If I dress like that, act like that, if I could be her, I would have that same kind of attention from the guys. I would be beautiful. That's what's going on in their mind. Here's what I want you to realize. Yeah. That's right. And that's how I know the way you were thinking. Yeah, because if you look at that picture, if it was your mother, you're like, Mom! What are you doing? Right? So don't think like look but don't touch is somehow some valid thing, right? Because guys are wired differently than girls. All right? Girls are stimulated by touch, but guys aren't. Guys are stimulated visually. All right. Another reason why guys are, what makes them jerks is that they have a series of obligations or maybe even expectations. I bought you that bracelet. Did you like it? Oh, it was a beautiful bracelet. Mm. And last week I took you out to dinner. Was it a good dinner? It was a good dinner. I've done all these things for you. You have. That's true. Right? It puts this like pressure of obligation on you, and you're like, there's a jerky thing to do. I'm just saying, like this is falling for those lies. Manipulation. I'm sure Josh wasn't like this. Your dad a banker? Because you got my interest. Oh. See? No, man. Is your dad a boxer? Because you're a knockout. No, man. You're so pretty, I forgot my pickup line. Steven back there. Some people ask me about how I met my wife and what I said. I make up a story because none of that's true. But I tell them this. I met her in the lobby at Greenwood. She was working on the front desk. I just leaned over the desk one day and I said, well, the red rose is a falcon and the white rose is a dove. The red rose speaks of passion, but the white rose speaks of love. So I give you a snow white rosebud with a flush on its petal tips, because the love that is purest and sweetest has a kiss of desire upon the lips. Yeah, and my point is this. Guys will say anything, all right? They will say anything. That's my point. All right. Some of the things that I often hear go something like this. Let's give this a trial run. We're in a committed relationship. But what they really mean is let's give this a trial run. This is anything but commitment. Because a commitment is a promise that you're going to make, not a temporary arrangement. And the reason this should be offensive to you is because you are not a used car. This is not a trial run. Or you are a who, not a what. You're a person, not a thing. Let's see if we're sexually compatible. I hear this all the time. We got to try this out, see if we're sexually compatible. I call it the law of progression. There's nothing easier than physical progression in a relationship. It starts in public school, it starts sometime like 7th, 8th grade, where you're sitting at a football game and you've got this, it's a cold day, so you're sharing a blanket, and you go to rub your leg because it's cold, and he rubs his leg, and your pinkies, and you, woo! And you're like, wow, it was amazing. And then pretty soon, and you're talking to your friends, and he's talking to his friends, but under the pinkies are interlocked. And that's a thrill. But it doesn't take long before you're like, interlocked pinkies, meh. So what? You walk her up the door and you're like, I had a really great time tonight. I had a great time too. Hopefully I can see you again. Like tomorrow in the first period. I'm going to give you a little kiss on the cheek. And you get that little peck and woo! The heart's racing, the palms are sweating, and wow, it's amazing. Well, you know how it goes. This is the phrase, one thing leads, that's the law of progression. It's too easy. It's too easy. You don't have to take any work. What really takes work is getting to know somebody and to love them for them. That's what really takes work. That's what really takes commitment. This is just a guy being a jerk. Falling for a jerk. When I was in high school, there were some, I thought they were pretty decent girls, but the guys they were going out with, I'm like, I know that guy's a jerk. That's how it all came into my mind way back then. The problem is that guys should have an edginess to them. There is something attractive about an edge. The question is, what kind of edge are you looking for? Are you looking for the edge of a rusty pocket knife? Or are you looking for the diamond sharpness of a knight's sword? That's the difference between confidence, a guy that's confident, and a guy that just has an attitude. A guy who is courageous compared to a guy who's just moody, all this teenage angst, right? A guy who has resolution, he's going to stick to his values, or a guy who's just stubborn. Right? The difference between a guy who protects the weak as opposed to a guy who uses the weak. Yes, you should be edgy, but the question is, what kind of edge are you going to be? All right, God's view of guys is be like the Lord Jesus. Right? I'm the good shepherd. This is what the good shepherd does. He lays down his life for the sheep, protects, provides. That's the good shepherd. That's the kind of man you should be. That's right, be like Jesus. Push over tables and clean out the temple. Yeah! Live outdoors. Yeah! Walk for miles because you're athletic. Yeah! Welcome children. Yeah. Be meek and lowly of heart. Yeah. That's the kind of man that you can be. All right, girls, sorry, it's your turn. What makes you foolish is that you are, in fact, the gatekeepers of sex. Basically, what that means is this. Whatever standard you set, guys are going to meet it. Rewind back to Sense and Sensibility. Emma, Jane Austen, right? You're like, I've never read it. I don't blame you. What's the movie? In that era, if you wanted to go a-courting, you got dressed up in a suit. You put on the top hat and the cummerbund. You got the 4-horse carriage. And you rode up to her house, and you stepped out, and you knocked on the door. Actually, the footman knocked on the door. And the servant came out, and they were like, Madame, here's his call. Would you like to see him? Right? My point is, he went to, now, guys pull up and they're like, honk twice, and if you don't come by the third one, they've already left. Right? Sure. Right? My point is that guys will rise to whatever standard you set. Or they will rise to whatever standard you set. But you undercut your power when you have no expectations for them to rise to. I'm just speaking to women in general. Like, it's frustrating. What makes girls foolish often is because of what you wear. It's because of what you wear. I ran across this this interesting website. It got me thinking about, like, why do you spend so much time deciding what you wear? You don't know the answer to this, but you do deep down. It's hard to articulate. But why? Here's why. Because clothes send a message. I know it's odd to think about, but clothes send a message. The question is, what kind of message am I showing by the clothes that I'm wearing? Am I showing the message that I'm sexually available? Am I showing the message that I'm wealthy? Maybe the message that I'm just trying to fit in with everybody else, or maybe the message that I am a child of a king. Like, what message are you sending? Which raises the question, like, why do we wear clothes at all? Like, what's the purpose of clothing? It's because clothes conceal and reveal. The question is, who are we revealing to? And who should we be concealing from? If you think about the valuables in your house, you don't put them on your sidewalk. Why? Because they're valuable. They're for the people of your family to enjoy and appreciate. And that's it. Clothes do that same kind of thing. They conceal and reveal. This is the article I was talking about. This mom is at Notre Dame, so they happen to be in Mass. And she's like there with her 3 boys, and in front of her are these college girls wearing leggings. She writes this like open letter to the campus of Notre Dame and says, please girls, wear leggings anywhere you want, but how about like not during Mass, because it's a little distracting for my boys. You know what the girls of Notre Dame did in protest? They just wore leggings like every day for the next week. Right? Like, you can't tell me what to wear. But the problem here is about decorum, like caring for somebody else, like putting somebody else in front of you, showing that they have value by decorum. I'm saying this facetiously. But what if someone wrote a letter, an open letter to the girls at Notre Dame and said this: I'm offended by girls sunbathing naked. Please protest. Like, what would their reaction be? My point is about decorum. The idea of, like, decorum is fragile. Be considerate. If guys think differently than you, if visual images matter to guys, be a little considerate of it. All right? Be a little, like, understand it and be a little considerate. And I know that you do. I know you do. Because when that other girl walks by with the short, low, words across the butt, and all the guys are like, you're like, ooh, that girl, she's so, I hate that she's getting all the attention, because tomorrow when I wear my outfit, look out, because I want that attention. That's the problem of decorum. Like, be considerate a little. The believing in fairy tales. When I was in high school, there was a girl, her name was Jen. Jen was the captain of the cheerleading team. Who was she dating?
Captain of football team.
That's right. Actually, he was the quarterback, but he's also the captain, but fine. Anyway, a few years after high school, I ran into Jen. Like, I was in Little Caesar. Like, she was there. I walked in the door and stood in line behind her. I was like, Jen? And she's like, who? I wasn't very popular in high school. I'm like, it's me. Dang it. She's like, oh. I'm like, how's it going? She's like, oh, fine. I'm like, what's happened since high school? She's like, oh, Jason and I got married. I was like, oh, that's great. Congratulations. But then we got divorced. I was like, oh, that's sad. Oh, but we got married again. I was like, oh, congratulations. But we're going through another divorce. Oh. That's rough. What? I know. It's like, what? Why does she keep marrying and divorcing him? Because she was the captain of the cheerleading. And who was she supposed to have her happily ever after with? And it wasn't working out, but they just kept thinking that somehow this is going to be a success. It makes you stupid. The last reason what makes girls stupid is because who really benefits in a world of free sex, skimpy outfits, or gender equality? Now you're paying for the meal. Who's benefiting? It's not women. Newsflash. Like, don't be stupid. Like, none of this helps you out, all right? None of this helps you out. What's God's view of a woman? A woman is anyone who has the unique potential to be mothers. Not just in the biological sense, but also in the mentor sense. All right, you might not be able to have children, but you're a mother in potentiality. You have the potential to be a mother. But not just biologically. Also in the mentor sense, like you can be a mother to others. So just like the men, be like the Lord Jesus. Value what he values. So if he values things like this, love your husbands, love your children, be discreet, chaste, homemakers, good, obedient to your husband, that the word of God may not be blasphemed. Value what he values. Do what he would have you do. Follow what the Bible teaches in those ways. Now you might be thinking, okay, there's these two lies that we can fall into, this trap we can fall into when it comes to men and women. Sometimes we fall into this lie that men and women are of unequal value. All right, so that's one extreme, and that's a problem. That men and women are of unequal value, that somehow men are more important than women. On the flip side of that is that because they're of equal value, they have to be exactly the same. But the question is the same as what? And it's always the same as men. That's why you have these people like Rosie the Riveter, Lara Croft, right? They're always leading armies, dressed like we were dying because of the Star Wars thing where they're about to be executed by these monsters or whatever. And the guy is in these robes and head, and the girl is in barely anything. And you're like, odd contrast there. But the idea is because they're somehow unequal, because they're men are somehow more important or whatever. This value that we have they have to be exactly the same, and they're always the same in the sense of they're just like a guy. They're athletic. They're a military leader. Or they're an action figure, right? And they're ready for sex at a moment's notice. But the Bible doesn't teach that. The Bible teaches that they're the same in value, but they're different in role. So the roles are different, but not the value is different. Right? So stick to that biblical view of what God's will or what God's view of a woman is. It's the best definition I've ever found of love. I really like this. Love is a commitment of the will to the true good of another. If you want to avoid the trap of being a jerk or being stupid, understand what love is. It's a commitment of the will. Notice it has nothing to do with emotions, because my emotions change. It's a commitment of the will. And even my will might falter. That's why I bind my will with a promise. And I say, will you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, to have and to hold, right, till death do you part? Yes, I do. We bind that will to a promise before God and these witnesses, so that they can hold me accountable to that promise whenever my will is faltering. I'm glad that it's a choice. It's a decision of the will. And, like, there's some mornings I wake up and I'm like, ugh, I don't feel very loving. Because love isn't a feeling. That's okay. It's a commitment of the will. I'm going to bend my will to that. I'm going to not feel like it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And it's to the true good of another, not what I think is their good. Early in our marriage, we went out to a restaurant. We got the menus, we got the drinks. The waitress was about to come, and Shannon left to use the bathroom. She's like, just order for me. I said, fine. So the waitress came, I'm like, I would like a grilled chicken sandwich, and I would like a turkey club. And I wanted the grilled chicken sandwich. My wife, she likes the turkey club, so it's turkey. Anyway, the waitress left. Shannon comes back. We continue talking. They bring the food out, and they set it down. They're like, a turkey club, a grilled chicken. And Shannon's like, oh, you got me the grilled chicken. I'm like, yes, I did. Because what I thought was good for her, right? It might not be what's actually good for her, right? It needs to be the true good of another. It's a true good, not what I think is good, all right? This is why things like masturbation is wrong, right? Because it's self-indulgent. It's not looking for the true good of another. It's looking at myself, all right? It's self-pleasure, all right? Self-love. It distorts the idea of true love, taking of self and giving to another. Which raises this kind of question of what is it that guys really want? So things that guys really like are a challenge. Guys like a challenge. I don't know if you know this, girls, but guys like a challenge. Swim the farthest, the deepest ocean? Huh? Can't be done. It's impossible. Tell that to Matthew Webb, 1872, when he emerges on the French coast of the English Channel. Climb the highest mountain. It's too cold. Air's too thin. Can't be done. Tell that to Sir Edmund Hillary, 1953, when he topped Mount Everest. The moon is way out there. Impossible to achieve. That's the stuff of myth and legend. No way could a man be on the moon. Tell that to Neil Armstrong, 1969. One small step for man. One giant leap for mankind. Guys like a challenge. Right? The challenge is to rise to that challenge of purity and honor and be someone who is, has someone else's best interest in mind. Guys like a mystery. This is why they're constantly taking things apart and unable to put them back together. You got 14 cars in your front lawn. You gonna fix any of them? Oh yeah. All right. Guys like a mystery. They like doing that. A woman is a mystery. All right. Now, one of the problems that guys have is that they'll see woman A and they'll say, "Wow, that's a mystery I'd like to unravel." But as soon as woman B comes along, they're like, "That's a mystery I'd like to unravel also." That's a fallacy. All right. A woman is a lot of layers. I mean, there is a lot to her. She is a mystery, wrapped in enigma, shrouded in conundrum. I'm just saying. You can spend your whole life trying to unravel the mystery of a woman. You'll never get to the end of it. I'm trying. All right? Just saying, guys like that. So be willing to unravel that mystery of one person. And guys like something of worth. That's why the deepest mine in North America is over a mile down. They're not mining for dirt. They're mining for gold. Diamond mines in Africa are much deeper even. Because it's of something of worth. But what guys really want is not something of worth. They want someone of worth. That's why virginity is valuable. That's why a woman of character is valuable. Because they're not a dime a dozen. They're unique. They're special. They're rare. So be someone that has these high moral standards. First Peter puts it like this way, that you're not running in the flood of dissipation. Everybody else is this flood of dissipation. Don't live like that. You're going against the flow. Be someone that's unique and different. Girls are different because they don't want the same things of guys. They want things like commitment, security. They want to be able to count on you for a good life. When I say a good life, I don't mean like success and materialism and all that. I mean a life that has core values, lived to the glory of God, is a good life. Or they want a commitment to that, the security of knowing that you're going to be there. That you care enough about you to get to know you for you. Right? They're not just after you for something. They really want to know you for who you are. I hate to tell you this, fellas, but beauty is in fact fleeting. But you know what I think is interesting? Like, the longer I'm married to my wife, I see this different kind of beauty revealed. It's really remarkable. Like, she is not near the person that she was, but she is way more beautiful to me now than she ever has been. It's hard to explain. But it's a beauty of character. That's what really lasts, right? A woman who fears the Lord to be praised. Be that kind of woman and understand that as a man, that it's not just looking for a good-looking girl, but one that has a character that matches it. Sexuality is meant to be a connection on all levels. We talked about this as intimacy, but what that really means is financially connected or naked. It really means to be physically. It really means to be emotionally, like to be able to just share anything. Right? It's meant to be something that's a connection on all levels. The Bible puts it this way: Adam knew his wife. It's a delicate and deep and rich word. He knew her that way. Right? It was meant to be a connection on all levels. Way before John, what's the guy's name? I can't remember. Way before John Legend. Was it? I will get in there. I can't get my link to. Yeah, it is. There. Yes, John Legend came up with the song "All of Me for All of You." Right? That's the exchange on your wedding day. All of me, everything I have for everything you are. They make that exchange back. Everything I have for everything you are. That's the exchange. That's where you start with that connection at all levels. Where you can have this openness without shame. Like, this is interesting, but people are the only living creature on earth that can have sex face to face. The animal world doesn't do that, but people do that. And there's a reason. It's because of this. You look that person in the eye. Right? You can be open without shame. When it's all about acceptance instead of performance. In the world, it's all about performance. How did it go? Rate it on Tinder. You know, how did it go? Not in a godly marriage relationship. It's all about this. It doesn't matter. There's no point of comparison. It's not like, oh, whenever we're together, are you thinking about that English major in college, or maybe that like high school guy? You know, that was really cool. There's no comparison, right? It doesn't matter. Like, you remember we were talking about when Dan and his wife got married, they kissed for the first time, and people were like, oh, it's a terrible kiss. Not to them. It was the best kiss they ever had. Because there's no comparison. See what I mean? Like, you can actually completely be open with the other person. And it's meant to bring about this fruit of procreation, where you have the responsibility for the child that you're about to bring into the world. And if you're not yet able to take on that responsibility, then this is not yet open to you. All right? So part of marriage is being able to take on that responsibility and raise that child. Sex inside of marriage is special. That's the bottom line. The Bible puts it this way in Hebrews 13. Marriage is honorable among all, and the marriage bed undefiled, but fornicators and adulterers God will judge. There's no comparisons. There's no worries. I remember riding on a bus when I was younger, in junior high. There was this girl that the other girls were teasing. They were teasing her because she was a virgin. And they were relentless, like every day, and malicious. I mean, they would just rake her over the coals. Anyway, I never had the guts to say anything. But one day, she finally fires back at them. They're like, and teasing her. And she's like, so one day she says, listen, anytime I want, I can be just like you, but you can never be like me. And I'm like, and you imagine on her wedding day, when she's standing there wearing white, and she looks into the eyes of her beloved, and she says, it was a hard road, but I'm faithful to you. And I resisted, and it was difficult, but I was in pursuit of the Lord and His will, and I trusted with this relationship like all others. And it's all of me. And he looks back at her and he says, I've been teased and ridiculed and made fun of, and it was a hard road. But I was faithful, and I'm here, all of me for all of you. And she says, I do, and he says, I will. You can trust a person like that because you never escape from the umbrella of purity. It's always going to be temptation. It's always going to be struggle. But someone who has went through that kind of fire, you can hang your hat on. Like you can say, that's a person I can count on. Right? That's what marriage is meant to be. That intimacy, that on all levels, that oneness on all levels. Well, what now? Just to kind of wrap it up. Some of you might be thinking, I wish I would have known all this sooner. Here's the good news. That you're not damaged goods. So you're a who, you're not a what. All right? You're a person, not a thing. And that God is in the business of redemption. Like He can bring beauty from ashes. Regardless of what you are, choose this path of self-control, because this is going to help you all through your life, whether it's your times of singleness or a life of singleness, whether it's times of singleness into marriage and a life of marriage. Choose that path of self-control. Why? Because it's worth it now, but it'll also be worth it later. Regardless, it's going to require God's grace. And that's why the Bible says this. Let us come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Let's pray.